Uh-oh.
Oops.
Well, we're recording a little bit late tonight due to a technical error. So why don't we move on to number 7, new business, which is sections 801, 818, 819, and 830, which is all has to deal with the budget and how it's presented. I know that there are some suggestions out here. I think that they're for the most part similar. Ed, I had asked you last week to let us know because you gave us a copy of South Kingstown's
Yes.
process, and you had some things to add to that.
So just to be clear, I gave you a copy. I literally just printed it from their charter, how their procedures. I was not suggesting take it verbatim, just exactly what they do. The first 3 sections deal with their timeline, how departments submit proposals and all that. All of that, I really don't have any opinion on. For us, I think how we do our budgeting process works well. I like that we are trying to do more public hearings on it. I know we do one on the weekends, try and get more people. I'm actually good with what we do basically up until our town council approves the budget on their end. The thing that South Kingstown does is they have 2 petitions that they allow. One is before they make a final decision and one is after. The one before is basically the traditional sense of the community to petition. We really want to see this included or not included in our budget, but it's more of a non-binding thing. The second one is after the town council says, this is our budget for the year, the citizens can petition for changes. And if they get 200 or more voters to sign off on the petition, then there is a referendum that is either approve the petition proposal or not, and it'll be what the town council decides is the final say. They do let you split it up so you can have one ballot question for municipal versus one for school, but that's it. It's not a perpetual thing of voting down a budget, try again, voting down. It's like once the town council has passed a budget, the citizens can petition to change it or not, and that's it. It's either or. And that was the element of it that I really like. So I feel that our town leaders, we should trust them to make the best decisions for the town. But I like also having citizens being able to, because sometimes
it's a check.
Yeah, it's a check of it. Because sometimes, and I don't want to accuse past council, but sometimes you sense that there's motivations to do one or the other that the other side doesn't like. And it's like, okay, if we really want, so let's say town council, we can just tax, we don't have to answer to anybody. We can tax up to the maximum every year if we want to. Well, no, hold on. The citizens can go say, oh, no, you can't just spend our money and send us the bill for it. Versus the opposite of, you know what, we don't want to spend any money. There's enough money here already to get by. We're not going to raise taxes by anything. And then you hear departments like, no, we do need at least some money. Kind of at least the balance. I like that our town council is trying to get the balance of all the departments, try to figure out what is best. But right now we're stuck in a thing where we can't raise our budget at all without the approval of the voters, whether for anything. And as we've seen, we've had 2 referendums in year 1, 3 in year 2, and I think last year we only had 1, but I don't think that's
On the first try,
yeah, we got it done.
but everyone thought it was the 4th try.
Yes, I don't know if people knew which year they were voting on last year, but they did. So that was the starting point that I was trying to bring forward.
Does South Kingstown have a financial town meeting?
No.
Do they have a referendum?
So it's once the town council approves the budget, and I believe it's set in here what day in May or whatnot it's supposed to be done by. From that point, they have, I believe, 10 days that, so Tuesday or Monday, you have it.
Ted, you know what might be helpful? I put a little work into this.
Okay.
I just kind of synthesized it
Yep.
down. Here's South Kingstown, the kind of summary steps, and here's Coventry. I've got copies for everybody. I email it to you guys, when email it to those guys. They want to look at it. It might help us
Thank you.
walk through the conversation.
So on South Kingstown, it's simply that the default is the town council's recommendation budget passes unless there's a petition within those 10 days to modify the budget by more than $250,000 up or down. I think that assumes that if it's less than $250,000, it's a non.
Yeah, I don't know what, I don't, yeah, it's.
So
That's
I don't know
exactly-
why they picked that, but I do like that because then there is a default budget you have to work with. And it's only an exception to that if there's a motivated constituency to propose an alternative.
And presently, if the budget gets voted down, we're required to put it to a vote again.
No,
No.
there's no requirement. If it gets voted down, you're level funded. The idea that to avoid being level funded, if you think you can pass it again, you can have another financial town meeting and another referendum and try again as many times as you want or can afford to do.
So is that our language, the 1/12, or is that state language when it comes to municipal budgets?
Well, this is what I said, we're talking about Coventry, right?
Yeah.
This is what I have, just kind of diving into it, says, so we end up with the last action, all town electors budget referendum. Operating budget fails, you retain on a month-to-month basis budget using current year level of appropriations. If both the operating and capital budgets fail, the town council shall propose an alternate budget to be presented at a special financial town meeting to be followed 2 days later by a special all-day electors budget referendum, which we did last year. We had the first one, failed.
Then
We had the second one
Failed.
with failed.
Said the third one.
If both fail again, the way I look at it, rinse and
That was
repeat.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
So we discussed this at length during the budget process and solicitor said, based on the interpretation, one way to look at it is don't, after you take the second time, you can revert to section 3. 1/4. Under the powers and duties of the town council. The
Did we
town
get all those
council,
copies made for everyone, by the way? Remember all of the stuff that,
the clerk has it and they're working on it.
all right,
The town council has all the powers and duties to reenact, amend, or repeal ordinances, resolutions for the appropriation of money, for the levy of taxes and assessments, for the borrowing of money and issuance of bonds, notes, or other evidence of indebtedness. That's a plenary power over the budget that precedes section 8.
Where was that? What paragraph?
3.14, last A, B, C, D. So here it almost says that they have the power to do a budget independently. But because of these provisions, they have to at least present a budget. If it fails to adopt, they have a second try. But then if that fails too, can you revert just to their authority and carry on? Or do you have to
Interesting.
persist? It doesn't say. And the pragmatic administrator in me says, don't waste any more time on futile efforts. You're the representative supreme governing authority in the town. Just do what you think is best and move on. But
Could they raise taxes using that logic?
yes,
Okay.
because it says
Okay, no, I'm just, I'm.
for the
'cause
levy
some-
of taxes.
Okay, just
So,
throwing it out there that.
so what, we did leverage this then 2 years ago. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying we did not. So they did just the opposite. They said after it didn't pass the second time, they're gonna just try again a third time. And when that
The
budget-
third try was by the new council.
Yeah, the third try was under the new council in January. The new council had been in office all of 60 days. And that still failed on a 2% levy increase after the 0 and the
And
4
4.
had failed.
Mhm.
And then they just gave up and looked forward to the new 20.
Because it was about the time to start the calendar for that.
One
anyways.
budget, yeah. And then, so from January, I started in April and that was my single task. We want you to focus on nothing but passing the budget. So I did the budget in 2 months and had a lot of help and it passed in June. Fortunately, so. And it was a very narrow margin.
Mhm.
Yep, I remember, okay.
143, 142 votes or something.
The only question I had at in the opening paragraph of the financial provisions, it carries some language that dates back to 1978 when we lost all the school sports.
8.01.
I believe it's
Yeah,
801.
looks like it doesn't.
Yeah, it seems like it's kind of like it was only meant to be for a single year. There was no sunset put on it. So I just wonder, why would we keep that language in there when it has nothing to do with future budgets? Because it relates to 1978.
This is,
It specifies the time
Fiscal
between March
year,
and
amended.
June.
yeah. And I don't know, I think with anything like this, you have a preamble that says why you're starting it and what the start date is. And after that, it's just in there.
Yeah.
So,
Then could I send these to these
Yeah,
folks
yeah.
by myself? I know you like try to control what's being sent around.
no, you can do it during the meeting because you're in a public meeting and
Okay.
it's not a violation of.
Just want to make sure.
Because we're
Oh, well,
here.
I think so. I don't know. If you want to just send it to me and I can forward it out, that way it's not a violation for sure. I can do that. Do I already have it?
I'm gonna
'Cause I didn't-
send it to you separately right now.
Okay.
Just the
I
PDF
hadn't
for
seen
just this. Then the guys on the screen will have it. Just handy, but back to your point, understanding Coventry, back to your point, and the other summary that we got today too is the petitions are interesting because I remember when we were doing the financial town meeting, when we were in the room, everybody remembers that.
Mhm.
When everybody was writing $10, putting on a piece of paper, bringing it up as an amendment, $50. That's what was going on ad infinitum. I think that's why they it's got to be 250K. It's got to be something relevant.
Substantial.
It can't be, no pencils in grade 3 and a certain
Because I
elementary
remember
school.
the last go around with the old financial
Right.
town meeting was like, you could make small amendments that night. When I first started going, it was 100,000. I think by the time we got rid of it, it was 250,000. So it's like, if you want to add $1 million, it's got to go to an all-day referendum. But if you just want to add $50,000 for fresh share, yeah, exactly.
I
Something.
remember it being $180,000
Yeah,
for years, and then probably within the last,
Last couple of years, I remember they raised it.
maybe
It's in
the
one of
last
these
6 or 7
things.
years, they raised it
But-
to 250, which is.
But yeah, it should be, the change should be significant too.
Right, which is what so to your point, South Kingstown, there's a potential referendum.
Correct.
If they get the signatures
Mhm.
and they can move it forward, and it's a tight timeline. Because the final town council budget, they approve the budget based on input and smaller petitions from an earlier 2 public hearings that they have on or before May 1st.
Mhm.
Then folks have by May 12th, like 10 days or so, to come up with this 200 signatures and a write-up of a significant decrease or increase petition. That would then be voted on at an all-day referendum. So it'd be up 250, down 250. There might be 3 things on
Right.
there that they
But
could.
that would be an addendum to a budget that's
Correct.
already in
So
place.
yes, would
Yeah.
be,
Yeah,
I would try, I didn't
Which
get the
forces,
ballot format that they had. They had one in 2020. That's how I actually
Mhm.
found out about this whole thing. But basically the question was approve the petition amendment or not. And if not failed, then the budget that was approved by the town council became the budget. So it was one or the other. It was
Scott?
I'm kind of curious of how, I think the past, maybe say 10 years, how many times did someone petition that budget in South Kingston? I'm kind of curious if there's any data on that. Maybe we
Right.
could find out.
I can try to find out for you. I only know the one, so.
You know what, I can just, maybe I'll call maybe I'll give them a call tomorrow. I'll just maybe ask the town clerk if, hey, has anyone ever challenged the budget in the past 10 years that you can remember offhand, and see what she comes up with.
2020 was the only year that I know of off the top of my
Okay.
head.
So that's pretty interesting that they do that, but it does simplify things a lot more than what the current status of what Coventry does now, And I think that's what we can all agree on, is we're trying to move forward with this kind of process than kind of doing in ancient ways of passing a budget, which is costing a lot of money.
because if you think about what we just went through, just for understanding what we went through the last couple of years, still pretty painful. I mean, 3 votes,
And that got nowhere.
then then Ben got tasked with trying to get another vote done and working on the budget. It was an awful lot of effort and time
Mhm.
going by where budgets were just levels funded, I assume.
And the saddest thing of all is all 3 budgets, all 3 votes had very low voter turnout compared to the relative size of the town and town registered voters, you know. A small percentage each time showed up to vote, which is very frustrating, you know, as a taxpayer. Like, you know, you get a lot of people that complain about things, but it's like they don't vote to make the change, you know, they don't get involved to make changes, and it's, you know.
I think the first one that we had back in 2019, we had not even or right around 1,000 votes over the
Yeah.
whole thing. And it was like, people were shocked to find out that budget didn't pass. Like, why? Well, no one showed up for it.
Yeah, they may have assumed something.
Right
but
there.
You should never assume. I think they had 10% turnout or less.
Yeah.
So that's not right either. So, you know, I think the South Kingstown process, just as an example, empowers the town council a little more at the end of the day, and does have 2 public hearings and does have an opportunity for all-day referendum, but some people have to do the work. And I think the downside, I think you may have mentioned it too, is you can get little working group fiefdoms, or, you know, say, hey, we can get a change in the budget if the 200 of us work together, but it's still an effort. It still has to be thought through.
And it still has to go to the voters, and the voters get to decide between that alternative
Or what the
the
town
That's right.
council did.
council's
That's right.
budget.
You could still vote on it. There's still an opportunity for petitions during the public hearings that the way they look at that, the town council will review, but they have the discretion to take or not take them. And the school committee budget, at least in South Kingstown, is in total only for those earlier petitions. You can only say, you know, increase it, decrease it. That's it. That's all you can
Yeah.
do.
I think the most voter turnout is always in November, and budgets are always done in June.
June.
Yeah.
We're gonna do it in May this year,
Yeah,
before they get out on summer break.
you can't let
Yeah,
that
it's-
happen.
You know, I always liked the financial town meeting thing, but it was fewer and fewer and fewer people that were going to it. And then it just caused a lot of just anxiety, I guess, among people that didn't go to it, because they're saying, oh, these 200 people made a decision for a town of, you know, 35 or 40,000.
Yeah,
It's tough.
yeah, for sure. But this is, you know, interesting, for sure.
Brad, did you want to add anything about?
Yeah, you have some thoughts with it as well.
Well, the other thing with the budget on that, okay, towns are the only institution that I know of in which you have amateurs in control of things. Okay, if you're, you know, if you're in industry, okay, you have your financial people draw up your budgets for the year. Okay, you don't have your employees figure out that they're going to change it afterwards,
Or your
You know.
shareholders.
or your shareholders. Yeah, I mean, but, you know, you look at the size of the town, you know, and what that would be if you were
We have
chief executive of a
36,000
company,
shareholders
Right.
determining the fate of.
you know, it just doesn't make any sense not to listen to the people that have the knowledge. You know, it's kind of the same argument of term limits should, you know, you only serve 1 term or 2 terms. It's like, you want your doctor to only serve 1 year of medical school?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really,
Brad?
No, I like, when Ted mentioned it a couple meetings ago, when I first heard about that. The thing I sent out today, I just tried to kind of mesh what we have now with what South Kingstown does. And so I don't know if you just want me to read through this, or did you get a copy?
have a gun.
Yeah, we'll set to everybody. Yeah,
Okay.
walk us through. Yeah, that'd be great.
I've got it all marked up and everything.
And basically my timelines and might be off, but that can be hammered out later if we decide to move forward with anything. Like, I still think the process up to the town council, as Ted mentioned before, up to when they approve a budget will stay the same. And then we could start the petition process And I picked that 250 number because that was what South Kingstown was using too. And they can't, if depending on where the council had put the budget, they can't go, obviously they can't go above the 4% or lower than last week,
Or lower than the previous year.
lower than
Yeah.
the previous year.
Can't go against the
Right,
state law. that
yeah,
you know.
right. Right. And I thought that the 200 number for qualified voters for each petition is a good solid number. And then after that, I wasn't sure, I came up with two options. The petitions can be voted upon by the public, like for 3A, I was thinking if it goes to an all-day referendum, I don't want to have like 6 different options.
Mhm.
So I was thinking at like a financial town meeting or a special town meeting where a vote's taken, whatever petition gets the most votes, then on the all-day referendum would be council budget or the petition version of the budget at the all-day referendum. Or if we want to remove a step and go back to kind of like the old style financial town meeting, it would be all those in one. And the voting would all take place that night. And whatever receives the most votes would be the budget.
So 2 presentations at 1 financial town meeting, which is your B, right? So you
Well,
return
under
to the
your,
financial town
yours, the
meeting.
town council's deciding, like, they're saying, this is the budget, it's done. There's only gonna be a financial town meeting if there is an objection or petition to change it.
Right,
Is that right? Okay. So we wouldn't be presenting it. It's already been done from that.
right. Yeah,
My issue with
these are just my thoughts. I mean,
My issue with the financial town meeting aspect of it is, for 10 years, I was unable to make a financial town meeting because I was in Ohio, I was in California, I was all over the place. Kind of a little bit disenfranchised at that point in time.
Okay.
I like the idea of a referendum because you can at least do an absentee ballot on that,
yeah, I mean, that's
You know.
my preference, but I just threw it out there as
Yeah.
an option.
but
Yeah.
Do we have absentee ballots for local referenda?
No,
I didn't think so.
it would be nice to do that, though.
Yes, it would.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Can
would.
we do that?
Yes.
Because I asked at one of our budget referendums, they said no, that we don't do that. I wasn't sure that's like a week.
so we don't do it because we're not required to.
Mhm.
And it's an expensive extra bit of work for the Board of Canvassers to prepare and plan and track, and
Okay,
it's just more labor and effort than what we have now. And with the limited resources and budgets, everyone's gonna be
can we
resistant
do
to more
early?
work.
Can we do early voting like here as an alternative?
So yes, well, you can set it up however you want, right? You're gonna make a recommendation and whatever goes into the charter becomes law.
Right.
And that's what we'll do. So your recommendation that we have a lockbox that people can drop ballots off within a week of the election or date,
Mhm.
within 2 days before the election is an option. The question is, how do they get their ballots? Do they have to come pick it up and
Yep.
do it on site in advance?
Mhm.
Is that really just creating an open polling place 3 days early, and then you just have the security issues that it remains locked and
Yep.
secure? That you have to, one of the other things that I remember the Board of Canvassers saying is that to have an open polling place
Yeah,
by
there are people
state
there.
law, you have to have at least 3 witnesses for election security, and that checking your ID and
Yep.
whatever the process is for voting during that entire time. So you're adding hours of paid labor
Right.
to man and operate a longer operation.
I mean, understanding the expense, I think maybe we all agree it is a good idea, though. Whatever we can do to get beyond 10% turnout for the budget of the town. Worth it.
Well, I love it.
In my
if
opinion.
You don't need to have one because
Then it's no cost at all.
Right.
But the key, and
So
keep in
the
mind,
event that you have it,
Yeah.
then absolutely, I would say you know what, the savings we're gonna reap by not having referendum
Every
every
year.
year. We're gonna, when we have it, because it's controversial and important enough to do it, we're gonna make it very accessible. So that people can come do it for 5 days.
What's interesting about, what's interesting about the South Kingstown idea is there is an opportunity for an all-day referendum, but it's one.
Mhm.
There's not another
One and
one,
done.
and another one, and another one.
There's no
Yeah.
fail if then, because the default is the recommended budget passes if the other one doesn't prevail.
Right.
And if the other one prevails, it prevails.
But it can't be less than the previous years.
Right, it has to follow state law because you
more.
can't underfund the school and you can't
Overtax the,
overtax the 4%.
Yeah. I kind of like that because you get the one bite of the apple, not where in Coventry you can get multiple bites in an apple, you know?
In other words,
keep
It's like
voting until you
a
get it.
Halloween carnival. That
Mhm.
apple keeps bobbing and you miss. And
So if I'm
Really
reading this
bombing for
right,
French fries.
if I'm reading this right, no one can petition to decrease the budget. So the only
No,
budget.
no,
No,
yeah.
they can, but
They
not
can,
below
but
the
not-
previous year.
no,
Okay,
the school,
okay.
the school is
so-
the only.
Yeah, the school you
I don't
can't.
know.
so.
It wasn't Ted's, it was the Brad, what you circulated today. At the bottom of it, what I loved is that you could actually bifurcate the school budget from the town budget and make recommendations just about one or the other. Because you can't, if you lower the town's overall levy, no one really knows whether that's hitting the school or the town. The school is 75% of the budget, so it's good, you can't underfund the school, so if you bring it down too far, you're just wiping out one of your municipal departments.
Mhm.
So it might not make sense, but if you split it out so that they could see what they're impacting, do you want to vote on a revision to the school's budget or the town's budget?
Oh, yeah, I did have, you have to specify which line item you want to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah. Then that makes it a little more transparent about what you're doing.
yeah, this
Could
was,
you do pull from A to B? Like I want to take 500,000 from the municipal, put it to the school, or vice
Yeah.
versa.
I don't see
So
why
like
not,
you're actually.
as long as it's not more than
I'm just
250K.
asking, I'm just,
That would make a lot of people frown, I think.
okay, all right, okay.
Well,
No, I'm just-
because there would be no rationality to it. Moving dollars is a very simplistic way of like, oh, you got 500,000 of my tax dollars, just move it here instead of there. And it totally ignores that in order to operate a public works department, if
They
you
need
take way more than 5%, you've just
totally closed to the
totally
park.
closed
Oh,
it
yeah.
down.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, but it's that most people going to the polls are not sufficiently educated and informed of the dynamics of local government. That's why they hire professionals to do the work so you don't have to. And I think that the bigger challenge is more of a communications and transparency in government to build the trust with the voters so that they can approve everything because they have the confidence to.
that's what
Right
I know.
now, they don't have the confidence because there hasn't been transparency and communication to the degree needed.
Well, perhaps asking the questions the way that I had suggested might make it a lot easier for people to vote. And probably we could gain their trust back. So once you gain the trust of the voters back, you'll be able to move forward. It just seems that we've been in this no thing for the last 8 to 10 years, where it's just no, people are saying no, and not understanding that regardless of whether you vote no, we have to continue to move on. This is a community and we need to, provide these services. So
I like the idea of the either or versus yes, no. It's one or the other.
Yeah,
It's gotta be one or the other. You can't just wipe it out.
Like voting for two candidates.
True.
Just one. or not.
true.
My only kind of concern is, I do like this idea, but what could happen if we end up with 20 petitions to make a bunch of changes? Like, could this just create a whole bunch of red tape and obstacles?
That's why you require 200 signatures for the petition. You're never going to get more than one.
Well, so my worry is one faction that's 201 people large put together 20 petitions.
Oh.
Because in Coventry, that's possible.
So you would have, for each petition, you would have a separate budget proposal, right? And that means on the referendum, it would be the town council's recommendation and A through T of the 20 other proposals. And it would be a plurality, but the way it's written in South Kingstown, or one of them, is whichever one gets the most votes wins. It doesn't have to be a super majority.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to
Right.
like have a vote on all the petitions so that if, when it goes to an all-day referendum, there'd only be two options.
Either town councils or.
Or whatever one receives most vote if there is more than one
Okay.
submitted.
That makes sense. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit. And Ben, I'm extremely impressed that you know T is the 20th letter of the alphabet that quickly. That was impressive.
Very good.
I just
Why he's
counted
the
out
town
the double
manager.
check. That's true.
That-
You're
That's
really good with
also,
letters.
that was also why I tried to put in there, whenever, if that voting ever took place, you can only vote for one of the petition budgets. You can't vote for more than one. So
Awesome.
that would probably eliminate some of that, that concern.
So worst case scenario is,
One or the other.
Yeah,
so, you know, a group of 200 people could have put together 5 different petitions for this. It's only one item they can petition. They could have numerous, but they have to be on all different line items.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And keep in mind,
it's
this,
one question with 5 different recommendations in that question. So I want to
Okay.
add 5,000 here, 5,000 there, 5,000 here. That's one budget. This is the other budget. You vote for this one, you vote for that one,
Yeah,
right?
the South Kingstown proposal says you will vote for one of either the original, or you can have as many of the proposals. So if 5 petitions said, let's put it right in the middle. Let's say the town council proposed a 2% increase to the school budget. And literally you got every 0.25% between 0 and 4. You can pick the one you want, I guess. And whichever one gets the most votes wins, and that's your budget.
Gotcha. Cool. Awesome. I just wanted to throw that out there. I was just thinking out loud. Thank you.
If you got one group that says we want to cut the 2% to 0, you can have that question, and one wants to raise it to 4, go for it.
it's interesting to point out the South Kingston idea, the 2 public hearings where you could do line item level petitions. That's the only time you can do it. And the town council has the discretion of using them or not. That in the referendum, it's an amount of money. It's a total amount of money,
Mhm.
a minimum of 250,000 up or down. And those people who sign that one petition could sign 25
They
of
could,
them.
yep.
That says it right here.
Mhm.
But then
When you get to the
the
ballot.
voter can only vote for one. It's interesting, isn't it?
Human
It
nature,
really is.
human nature is that when you have too many choices to make, you're gonna pick the first one and be done.
And that's to your point. It's a good idea. If you have 20, it's gonna be like,
I'm just gonna go with the council's recommendation. I trust them, whatever.
yeah, because it's just gonna be pluses and minuses of dollars.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, minimum 250. And anytime I see a hard number in any of these documents, that bothers me because it's not future proofed. It's like
Right.
250 may be worth nothing in 10 years, you know?
Well, it was like the thing, it was 100.
Well, you can use a
whatever for-
percentage then. If
Right.
it's more or less than 8%.
That's a better
of that
idea.
Budget,
Could do that.
or
yeah.
5% or 2%.
Not to,
whatever.
yeah.
Well, because 2% would be a lot, because that's $2.5 million out of 100 and something.
A percentage is a good idea, because yeah, they put 250, they must have to adjust it all the time in their charter. Because that might be irrelevant 10 years from now.
Do we think it may make sense to actually reach out to a councilman or 2 from South Kingston and actually get their feedback? Like, are they happy with this process? Has it been working for them? Or is it something they're actually miserable with?
And plus, I know we said in the last meeting, a couple other towns, it'd be interesting to see what other folks are doing too. There might be similar scenarios. I mean, I feel like I think we're all like, something needs to happen here. We're all in agreement, right? It just needs a little more, deserves research.
Right, yeah.
In my opinion, this is probably the most pressing issue I think we have, because I think our inability to pass budgets in the past and that's caused so much issue, I think leads to council members leaving their terms early because of the stress and the hindrance of it. So if we're able to solve this problem, I think that also solves some other problems.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Oh, agreed.
Any
Yep.
further discussion?
The only thing on that is just looking at the overall time frame. We just want to make sure that there's enough time built into this thing, so we're not doing the final yes or no vote, on July 4th or something.
Yeah, I mean, I just picked
Just,
rough numbers.
yeah,
rough
but just,
date, yeah.
some type of a timeline that we put it out so
Yeah, the
that,
budget schedule.
it
is
all
already
comes
in there.
out.
Yeah.
It has its dates and so forth.
but we added some different things, so that's gonna make a different modification. The other thing was the petitions that have to be signed by 200 qualified voters. Who determines that they're qualified?
It has to be the board
Board
of
of
canvassers.
canvassers,
So it all has to go to the Board of Canvassers, so that's another time period that
that they
gets,
gotta review. it
built
and
in.
all that, Yep.
so. If they have 2 weeks to get the petition, then the Board of Canvassers needs, I don't know how much time they would need. But they would have to review it.
Yeah, because I know South Kingston uses their town clerk to verify the signatures, but whoever makes most sense to do that should do that. Yeah, they've got a tight timeline on all of this too, because they even say, May 1st, council approves the budget. Referendums, petitions, 200 signatures. May 12th, they're due. Signatures have to be verified by May 16th, referendums June 4th. I mean, they've got all the dates laid out pretty tightly.
So how long is the timeline for people to gather signatures? In other words, if they want a petition? Does-
So it's about 10, 12 days.
I think they said 10 days, right? Which is that's a pretty tight window,
It is tight.
Yeah, I think on mine, I kind of made it about more than about double that, just because it takes
Yeah.
time to think about what you want to do and gather signatures.
Good idea. Yeah.
The time frame though is gonna push, let's say it was 20 days.
Yeah,
And that puts you from May 5th to the 25th, but you have the referendum scheduled for June 7th. Is that enough time to print the ballots with the petitioner's proposal?
right.
It kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
everything
kinda
would
need
need
to
to be
work
tweaked.
backwards.
Everything would need to be tweaked, yeah.
and that's probably why they came up with the 10 days, because they still need enough time to.
Board of Elections print those ballots?
Believe so, right? I think the
Yeah.
Board of Elections
Yeah.
prints all the ballots, so
They do.
you
So
have to,
you have a deadline to get that.
Right.
to them.
yeah,
They would
So
hit
you're at the-
fourth
you
where
might
we
be at
leave
the
on
mercy of
vacation.
the Board of Elections too. That's why the 10 days is probably there.
A lot of complications, that's for sure.
Very interesting.
Any more discussion? And if not, we can go to public comment. I see a couple of names up there. I see the council president has joined us. And do you have anything that you'd
She's
like to
muted.
contribute?
She's muted.
Can you turn your microphone on?
Just have it on.
Maybe she's just listening.
Okay. All right, there's another name, Pauline. So it looks like we're not going to have too much public comment tonight.
I can make a public comment though.
Yes, you can.
Okay, it's really kind of old business. I was just reading what you handed out last week.
Mhm.
And we had a lot of discussion on the ability, the school committee that's appointed, the school committee that's elected.
Yeah.
The power to approve collective bargaining agreements. And one thing caught my eye, I was reading this. It says, it also says, I'm going to go through this paragraph, Rhode Island Title 1629A18. Notwithstanding the provisions of any charter of any municipality where the school committee is appointed and not elected, to your point, it is elected in this town and excludes Central Falls. The power, and maybe I'm reading the sentence wrong, the power and duty to enter into collective bargaining agreements shall be vested in the chief executive officer of the municipality and not in the school committee.
That's if it's an appointed school committee. We have an elected. school
Is that
committee.
right?
Yeah.
So.
You gotta read this whole comma
'Cause it's all
splice,
in
comma
context,
splice sentence.
Right, right.
Yeah.
By the
Okay.
time they pack so much in there, you're trying to remember what the subject was for the predicate.
Exactly right. Stared at it like a
So
for a
basically
day.
what that says is like in Providence, well, actually not right now. I think they're being
The
run by
Yeah,
the
CEO is
state.
the mayor, and the mayor.
The
may
mayor
call the
appoints a
shots.
school committee. So,
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
but an elected school committee, they have the power to enter into contracts and sign them.
So it's still a problem that we have here.
Well, in my opinion, I think it's a legal suit, just waiting to happen. But you know what, I think when we had Kathy on a couple of weeks ago, I asked her, I said, who signs the contract? And she said, we do, the school committee. So,
The elected school committee.
right, so if town council said no, it's Carullo. It's now, they're gonna sue each other. And we don't want to go down that road.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you also said the fact that we have in our charter that it then has to be ratified by the state Coventry Town Council
That was added.
also may not belong there.
That's the one thing that was added. I believe it was, and I'll call it what it is it was a power grab. And the sitting town council at the time wanted to control the school spending and pretty much anything to do with the schools. So, you know, and my suggestion to them back then was, well, then why don't we just have a mayor? And then you can do what you want to do. You can control the schools, but as long as you have an elected school committee, that's their job. That's what they're tasked to do by law. So,
We need to change the verbiage though, but the solicitor may be helpful to this.
yeah,
right?
so
He might say this is fine, this is whatever.
do you happen to make any calls today?
Fortunately, I'm not a lawyer.
Okay,
Take my LSATs
Tomorrow,
as far as I
I'll
want.
do it.
all right, so
My commitment.
Ben and I are gonna interview two people that was suggested.
Okay.
And then we can get someone in here. And we all know that the reason we're doing that is because we don't want to put the sitting legal counsel of the town on the spot. You know, and discussing, you know, their position. So any further discussion on
Two-
public comment?
2 points, if I may, and this is just looking through a couple of areas where the current charter is at odds with current practices and reality. One is Article 9. We don't have a department that we call the Department of Records and Personnel, and HR isn't under the town clerk anymore. And the Board of Canvassers by statute is independent of the town council, town manager, and that structure. So the town clerk doesn't supervise the Board of Canvassers. So these are some things that are in our charter that are inconsistent with either practice or state statute. Article 10.23, the issue of hard numbers, it sets the competitive bidding at a threshold of $10,000. I believe the state's now up to $19,750.
Is it adjusted for inflation or consumer price index or?
The state adjusts it annually. And
It's for
so-
whatever they feel
We
like.
adjust-
Whatever they feel like.
Okay.
We adjusted that probably 8 years ago, maybe. It's
Right.
been that
So-
long, so it's.
So we have an issue right now in the old police station. The boiler's broken, it's leaking, it needs to be replaced. We got 3 bids. The low bid is 12,000. And this is, you know, we could be changing a transmission, any routine expense. Do we really need to be running everything?
Up to bid.
Well, after we bid it, but does every, you know, this is a routine expenditure. I
Does the
guess
town
I
council
think-
need to approve
do the
it?
council need to approve every detail, or can we move the threshold of a spending authority? I think I have the authority as it's written to just approve it, which I did today, because we can't just.
You
ignore
can't
things.
wait.
We can't wait, but the $10,000 is a hard number that doesn't make sense after a very short time, so. I don't know how to do that for bidding though, because the best way would be to just, we reference state law, whatever the state procurement policy is. Rather than having our
Then
own.
we could put that type language in there. That's.
Yeah, so that's a suggestion.
Okay.
Good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we did it last time, it was because the Public Works had a problem with garbage truck engines or something like that, and one of them blew. And their cap was $2,500, but it cost $5,000 for an engine, so it kind of stuck between a rock and hard place.
Yeah.
You need the truck for tomorrow, but you can't get it.
Well, that's why you hire a manager and a director of finance to manage the affairs and give reports on a regular basis to council, so everyone can be apprised of what's going on. And you don't want to get too far in the weeds, but you also don't want staff to get too far off the reservation, so that check and balance is appropriate, but at the appropriate level.
That's a good point. As I was reading through the charter too, I see there's a lot of hard numbers. Every time I see a hard number, it's like, it's a problem, probably. It's waiting to happen.
Could have been a good.
Any hard number is gonna become
74, but.
activity.
Exactly. But referencing the state where we can is a good idea. Wherever we can.
Okay.
Great.
So if nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye, we are adjourned.
Who,